your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names in the 2018 NFL Draft. We're talking wide receivers, and this particular guy that we're about to break down here is one of the most unheralded receivers in this draft class. When we talk about receivers, his name doesn't come up as early as it should. We'll talk about Calvin Ridley and how he's the cream of the crop, or some people will at least. We'll talk about Cortland Sutton and his height and his size and his ability to go get the football. We'll talk about DJ Moore and his meteoric rise up draft boards. We don't talk about Texas A&M wide receiver Christian Kirk like we should. At least I don't hear his name as much as I think we should be hearing it at this time of the year. And maybe it's because his junior season, which was his last year at Texas A&M, wasn't as impressive as a lot of people thought it was going to be. A lot of that is out of his control. The quarterback position was very shaky at best at Texas A&M. Some injuries really put them in a compromising situation where the quarterback position was not as good as they would have liked it to have been. Maybe it's because he's not the flashiest guy. Maybe it's because a lot of pundits knocked his speed before even giving him a chance to run at the combine. I'm glad he was able to put that to bed early on in the process at the combine by going out and showing that he could run. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you this much. Christian Kirk doesn't get the notoriety nor the publicity that he deserves, but I'm going to give him some today, and I'm going to tell you why he's one of the better wide receivers in the 2018 draft class. I'm going to do it right now by starting with his pros. So you start talking pros with Christian Kirk, and hands come to mind first. And again, with any receiver, really, the first thing I want to talk about is your hands. Can you catch the football? Are you a natural hands catcher? Are you comfortable snatching the football out of the air with your hands? That's what you do the most work with. And if you're not comfortable with your hands, then we have a problem at the receiver position. That's not a problem for Christian Kirk. He's got some of the most natural hands in this draft. One of those guys that doesn't have to think about catching the football. It comes second nature to him. He just does it. That's the way I prefer it at the receiver position. You look at his speed, something that was questioned early on in this process. They labeled him as a quicker than fast guy. And with that label, you know, most likely running a sub 4.6, but probably not going to exceed a 4.4 or a 4.5. And so you thought, okay, with that label, 4.55 for Christian Kirk, 4.52, something in there. He goes and runs a 4.47 at the combine, puts all of that to bed and quiets all of the naysayers. And so I love that. And when you watch the tape, I honestly don't know why people wanted to throw that label on him. I don't know where that narrative came from, because when you watch him on tape, you can actually see legit 4.4 speed. So I don't understand where that came from, but it's fake news. The guy can run, and his speed is just fine. Quickness and suddenness. This guy can run routes. He can break guys off. So we can go ahead and talk about route running, quickness and suddenness, and the ability to accelerate and run away from guys. All of those, we'll go ahead and lump them in right now, because he's a guy that can win underneath. And I think that's part of the reason why, along with his size, why a lot of people want to put him in a box. I'm not going to put him in a box, but a lot of people want to put him in a box and say that he's a slot at the next level. When you look around the league, guys like Jarvis Landry, who is probably more so a slot receiver, but he can play out wide as well. Antonio Brown, playing a slot, probably does some of his best work in the slot, but he plays out wide a ton. Those guys are 5'10", 5'11" at best. So Christian Kirk being 5'10", not going to kill him for that. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I can tell you this much. He runs routes like those guys that I just mentioned. The ability to break guys off. And if you go watch the UCLA game early in that ball game, he runs a Texas route, an arrow route over the middle of the field where he stems the corner or the linebacker to the outside, like he's going outside. And then he breaks them off, stems them, gives them a couple of sticks, boom, over the middle, accelerates, which I talked about that acceleration, and you see it on kickoffs and punts. When he has the football in his hands, he can accelerate. Well, first game of the season, at Jerry's World, he runs back a kickoff and is untouched, gone, touchdown. And that's what he brings to the table. His acceleration is there. He's got the suddenness and the quickness to win in the slot, which is why I think a lot of people like him as a slot receiver, because he can break guys off very quickly, seamlessly, and get open and win. And that's part of the route running that also I think a lot of people love from Christian Kirk, that will allow him to probably excel at the next level as a slot receiver as well. Physicality, 20 reps of 2 1/4, which is huge. Again, 5'10", 201, this guy's physically built, and at 20 reps of 2.25, that's saying a lot. The guy's strong, he's physically tough, and he's built for the NFL game. That is for certain. Run after the catch. The Wake Forest game is a great example of him catching the football out of space and then making guys miss and getting extra yards after the catch. And so the thing that you get, the added benefit you get with guys that are punt returners as receivers is once they get the football in their hands and they get out of space, they switch from wide receiver mode to punt returner mode, and it's fun to watch. And so when you get a guy like Christian Kirk that offers you that special teams value and ability, what you get is a guy that out in space on a hitch, on a bubble screen, they catch it, they get some space, all of a sudden now they're ready to break dudes off because they switched to punt returner mode. And so you get that from him, and I think that Wake Forest game is a great example of him switching from receiver to punt returner and breaking dudes off and getting yards after the catch. Ball tracking, okay? He's also a guy that can go and run the football down, go and get it, track it while it's in the air. The Florida game in 2017, great example of him going and getting the football in the air and making a play for his team. Got to be able to do that at the next level. If you want to separate yourself from some of the other receivers, in not only in this draft, but in the league, you got to be able to track the football when it's in the air. The defender, a lot of times, doesn't know where the football is. As a receiver, you've got to be able to track it, go get it, and make a play on it. And Christian Kirk can do all of those things. Sideline awareness. Beautiful catch against Alabama in the end zone. One of the few times they scored in that game. As a matter of fact, that may be their lone touchdown of that ball game. Nonetheless, he makes a great catch, a gorgeous touchdown grab right by the sidelines. I don't know how he kept both feet in and was able to catch the football and possess it without it hitting the ground and moving. It was all simultaneously done, and it was beautifully executed. A lot of these college guys come into the league and don't have the awareness or presence of mind to know where their feet are in relation to the sidelines. And so you'll see guys botch situations like that. He handled it beautifully and made a gorgeous catch in a tight quarter situation on the sideline with not a lot of space. Excellent catch by Christian Kirk. Dependability and clutchness. I thought his weight game was one of his best games in 2017. He did a lot of damage in that game. You saw a lot of what he brings to the table. And I think something that goes unnoticed with receivers, or at least it isn't talked about a lot, is when you whip your head around, sometimes the ball is on you. How do you react to turning around and football on you immediately? Do you tip it in the air, have it bounce off of your face mask? Does it go right through your hands? Or do you, in a split second, turn around, hands up, snatch the football out of the air, and make a play for your quarterback who may have thrown it a little too soon or put a little too much sauce on it? Either way, you turn around, coming out of your break, you look back and football is there. Can you react to it fast enough and pull it down? That Wake touchdown is a prime example of a guy having no idea the football is literally on him as he turns around, ball is there, and he somehow makes the catch for a touchdown. I watched another receiver in this draft, in DJ Moore, had the football be right on him, hit off of his face mask, go up in the air, get picked off, and take it to the crib. That can happen when you don't have the best reaction in the world to go and get the football. But when you talk about dependability, clutchness, that's one of those attributes that kind of goes under the radar. And I was late in that Wake Forest game when they had to have it in a shootout. I need it. I need it right now. Can you deliver for me? He did. And he's one of those guys that will deliver for you in a clutch situation when you got to have it. Versatility. I've talked about his versatility already, but I'm going to elaborate on it a little bit more. You know what you're getting from him as a receiver. Guy can win in a slot, and I think he might even have the ability to play out wide with how big he is. Even though he's 5'10", I think he can go out wide and mix it up with the big boys on the boundary. So I don't want to put him in a box and say he's just a slot guy, but then you can put him in the backfield as Texas A&M did at times. You can jet sweep him because he's got that return ability. Speaking of which, the biggest versatility added value you get with Christian Kirk is his ability to return kickoffs and punts. You want to talk about a guy that can give you a little something in the returns game, you're talking about Christian Kirk at the receiver position. This is a guy that had a number of returns for touchdowns throughout his career. A kickoff return for a touchdown versus Arkansas in the first game of the season in Jerry's world. You're talking about a guy in Christian Kirk with a huge punt return versus Florida in a game where they were stagnant offensively. He makes a big play, gives them a little bit of a boost in that game. So again, Christian Kirk gives you extra value in the returns game, and that's something that if I'm a team looking to bolster my special teams unit in addition to get some help at the receiver position, you can kill two birds with one stone, and his name is Christian Kirk. So you go from all of those pros to some of the cons that come with Christian Kirk. So measurables are the first con when you're talking Christian Kirk. Look, 5'10" isn't an ideal size in today's NFL, but again, I'm not gonna kill him for his size at 5'10", 201 because I love the weight. I mean, for 5'10", 201, that's actually big and bulky and physically built. And when you look at Christian Kirk, you see it. His arms are big, he's got a big lower body, so he's built to stand the NFL game, but at 5'10", there is limitations there. And so with these corners getting bigger and bigger every year, it's a little bit of a dicey situation when you're talking about measurables, but I'm not going to beat him up for being 5'10", 201 because I think he can handle himself in just about any situation on the football field from an offensive standpoint. So we'll see what happens with that. Catch radius. He doesn't have, at 5'10", obviously, he's not going to have the longest arms in the world. His catch radius isn't that great. He's not going to make a bunch of dynamic plays by extending away from his frame and going and getting the football. So just keep that in mind. When you got a guy that's sub 6 feet, you know that you got to kind of put the football in a position where they can go and make a play on it. You don't want to throw it too high away from them or else you could run into some problems. And that's the case with Christian Kirk and his catch radius. Leaping ability, high pointing the football. You didn't see a ton of that on tape. I don't think that's one of his specialties. I don't think that's something that he does extremely well. And again, at 5'10", you don't really want to necessarily be throwing up the ball for grabs in a 50-50 situation to a guy that's 5'10". That's generally not something you want to do. Some guys will go up and make plays for you. We've seen guys like an Antonio Brown, and I hate to reference one of the best, if not the best in the league currently, but I mean, Steve Smith is another guy that you could throw it up to and Steve would go and fight with a hell of a vertical, go up and get the football. That's not what Christian Kirk is. I wouldn't advise you to do that. That's not one of his strong suits. And then blocking. I think he competes as a blocker. I really do. But there are too many times where there's not good enough blocking being done by Christian Kirk. But I'd much rather you, if you don't block a guy straight up, I'd much rather you just let him go and see what happens. Don't hold. Don't negate a 7-yard run because you didn't block well and hold and turn it into a negative play. If your guy's got 5 already and you didn't block well, just let it go. And we'll see what we get, and then we'll just keep it moving. So I think he gives good effort. I think he's physical enough to do it. I just don't think he's in the right position a lot of times to block at the level that you would like him to. But again, that can be fixed when you get to the next level. But that's Christian Kirk in a nutshell, man. I think this guy is highly talented, underrated in this draft class, and I'm anxious to see where he goes. I think he's a guy that could potentially be a first-round pick, but most likely he's probably going to come off the board in a second. And I think he can get you some really good value because not only can he help you as a receiver, I think this guy can really help you in the returns game as well. So we'll see where Christian Kirk ends up. Speaking of seeing where he ends up, go to the website LouieTNetwork.net to see where Christian Kirk ranks among the receivers in this draft class with my ranking that I gave him as far as his score is concerned, and see where he ranks among his peers in this draft and see where he ranks among the rest of the receiver class as well on the website LouieTNetwork.net. In any event, it's going to do it for Christian Kirk in this Draft Prospects 101 breakdown. If it happens in the National Football League, you know your man Louie T's got you covered. Remember, we're changing the game over here, period. I'll see you next time. Plenty more receivers to come, so don't you go anywhere. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.